Richard talked about eating sardines for upping his omega-3 earlier, a while ago, as part of his bodybuilding protocol. I've over 100 cans of high-quality cutting sardines in extra virgin olive oil. But I think that's just a statement. So if you've got 100 cans, that's going to see you through for 100 days at least, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the big thing to consider there when buying, so you mentioned this when the question came up in regards to affordability, living a ketogenic and carnivore lifestyle, and you quite rightly said about tins. Tins are fantastic as long as they do not contain vegetable oils. So I buy my stuff in brine or salt water or olive oil. Is okay. Now, when it comes to supplementing with omega-3s, I know a few of the speakers mentioned about supplementing with omega-3s. I didn't want to stop them in their tracks, and I respect their opinions in regard to that. But these omega-3s in supplement form can also become oxidized in the same way that linoleic acid does. So when we mentioned with Philip there that these high omega-6 are detrimental to our health because they are linoleic acid. It's in fact because they're oxidized. But these omega-3s, which are the opposite, if you like, to the omega-6s, can also become oxidized in as little as 20 odd days from being packaged. So I would not advise someone to supplement with omega-3. I would advise to get your omega-3 through diet and lifestyle. Mackerel is one of the best sources. Sardines, I think, is probably number 2. Salmon, maybe number 3 on the list. But meat, beef, red meat also contains omega-3s. So we can get adequate amounts through living a carnivore lifestyle from the lion sort of diet lifestyle. But for me, for optimal amounts, I need to consume sardines or mackerel from a tin. But in brine. But fantastic, you've got 100 tins. Yeah, I'm jealous. I did stock up during the lockdowns and things through COVID, and I did have stupid amounts of tins of mackerels and sardines. But unfortunately, they've all gone into my belly. So,
what about krill oil?
Ooh, don't know. I think it is more stable. But I'll have to check. I'll have to check. All oils will become oxidized eventually. But yeah, I'm unsure. I'll have to look into krill oil. It's a fantastic question.
I tell you, a thing I've learned today and I didn't know is that in July in America, they dress up as Father Christmas.
Yeah. Oh, there you are. Sean is typing a message to me now. So let's see what he says. Let's see if he's going to join or... if he doesn't, I'll jump in and bore you with some Richard Smith science. Fantastic. He said, "Give me 10." So there we are. Fantastic. I'll appease you for 10 minutes with a slide. Look, let me share my screen.
Okay.
So this is coming through. Share screen. Okay.
Oh yeah, I've got to add it, haven't I?
So again, I mean, one of the other common themes that keeps rearing its head is calories, and a few of the speakers have been beaten up over their wording in regards to calories. And most of us know that it isn't calories, but this is my little breakdown. I wanted Barcade to go into a little bit more detail, but this is a more simplistic version in regards to why it's not the calories that govern whether we gain or lose weight. It is, in fact, the endocrine system. The endocrine system is our hormones. So energy needs to be accounted for. And I use the term energy over calories because not all calories are created equal. The source of the calories is incredibly important. But it's important to remember that when we are looking to lose weight or improve health and well-being, that we are restricting sugar. And we know that these are types of sugars, and these are sugars too. And as many of you are already aware, and I'm sure you already do, but useful for those who are just joining in, that all carbohydrates break down into sugar. So all of these are sugar. All carbohydrates break down into sugar. They are one and the same. We should not differentiate between the two because all carbohydrates break down into sugar. And when we understand this, we can take this into real life and further understand the effects of weight gain. In particular, the effect of insulin. So these are my four main reasons in regards to why it's not the calories that govern whether we gain or lose weight. And the reasons are that it doesn't account for the effect of insulin, doesn't account for the thermic effect of food, metabolic rate, and ketogenesis, amongst other things like lectins. But this is the process that it goes through, and I'm sure most of you are already accustomed to this. But when we consume carbohydrates, it breaks down into glucose. The glucose is then stored in the liver and muscle as glycogen, but these stores are finite. And when these stores are full, it overspills and stores as fat. And this is the mechanism behind storing fat within the body. It isn't through the overconsumption of fat per se. It's through the overconsumption of carbohydrates. That said, we can gain weight and store fat through the overconsumption of fat. This is how I would gain weight typically because I do not eat carbohydrate, but it is a lot harder to do this when you are not consuming carbohydrate. And this is something that I wanted Bart K to go into further detail on as well in regards to the Randall cycle. But this is something we can touch base on at a later date. But this is the mechanism that it goes through. So when we consume carbohydrate, the body increases or releases insulin. The pancreas releases insulin. It upregulates an enzyme called lipoprotein lipase, which breaks the bonds on the glycerol backbone and sends these fatty acids into the fat cell. So this is how we store fat. Now, for us to use this fat for fuel, we need another enzyme called hormone-sensitive lipase, which performs this in reverse, if you like, and breaks the bonds on the glycerol backbone to allow these fatty acids to diffuse into the bloodstream. But the issue with this is when insulin is elevated, it blocks hormone-sensitive lipase. It blocks our body's ability to put these fatty acids back into the bloodstream. So insulin is a storing hormone, and it wants to store fat. It's biologically impossible to burn fat for fuel when insulin is elevated. And this is why people who suffer with insulin resistance at the site of the fat cell struggle to lose weight. So we could be dieting intensely and unable to lose weight. And anyone who has been suffering for insulin resistance for a long period of time can attest to this, whereas they would restrict calories and not lose any weight because the food they are consuming is elevating insulin. Insulin is elevated for a long, so it creates this mountain effect. It's elevated for a long period of time, which is signaling the body to store fat. And when this insulin is elevated, the body is in fat storage mode. We cannot burn that fat until the insulin comes back down. Now, any one of us living a ketogenic or carnivore within the ketogenic or carnivore community, if we were to consume carbohydrate, generally, we would spike insulin, which we fear, but this is a good thing. This shows a good insulin response. Our insulin would spike and it would soon come back down, which means our insulin spike is doing this opposed to this mountain effect, which is way more preferable. But insulin is a storing hormone and it wants to store fat. And this is the first reason in regards to why it isn't the calories, which leads me on to a topic that we've covered several times throughout the 20 odd hours so far, and that's the vegetable oils or the seed oils. We're told that these are good for us. We're told that they're heart healthy, but these are not good for us. They're not heart healthy. These are high in an oxidized omega-6 called linoleic acid, which damages the liver and leads to insulin resistance. And again, I've highlighted the study on the bottom there. But these oxidized omega-6s cause inflammation, damage the liver, lead to further insulin resistance. They also, as this study highlights, a diet high in omega-6 intake is associated with weight gain in both animal and human studies. So at a cellular level, it signals the body to store fat. Saturated fats do not do this, and omega-3s do not do this, but these oxidized omega-6s tell the body to store fat at a cellular level. As a side note, high omega-6 intake increases leptin resistance, which is something that I'll go on to now if I have a little bit more time. But through a different mechanism, these vegetable oils tell the body to store fat, and they lead to insulin resistance around 6% higher than carbohydrates do. So we look at carbohydrates as being fat storing and the effect of insulin, which leads us to gaining fat. But these vegetable oils will cause more insulin resistance than carbohydrates do. Now, the issue with this is These vegetable oils are in everything. They are in absolutely everything. Everything you pick up in the supermarket, every pack of Pringles, Mr. Kipling cake, sauce, mayonnaise, all of these things are high in this oxidized omega-6. And this is the problem. These are not foods. These are Franken foods. They've been heavily manipulated by man. They have no place in the human diet. We should not be consuming these foods. Every time we consume these foods, we are signaling the body to store fat and further lead into insulin resistance. If you've got to read a packet, it's not food. And from that then leads us on to the grains. One of the other things that we are told, are good for us. We obviously know within our society for this not to be true. But the reason being is that these grains are high in lectins. Now, coming back to the whole caloric model being broken down, these lectins will bind to insulin receptors and signal the body to store 5 times more fat than insulin does itself. So to put that into perspective, if you were to consume a bowl of muesli, for example, in the morning that contained 100 calories, or a piece of steak or bacon and eggs that contained 100 calories, that bowl of muesli is going to store 5 times more fat through this binding to insulin effect than the bacon and eggs or the steak would. So again, further breaking down this whole hypothesis that it's the calories. And then leading on to leptin. So when we consume food, typically the body will release a hormone called leptin. This leptin tells us that we're full, and we move on with our day. Leptin is a satiety signaler. The issue with this is when we consume foods that contain lectins, these lectins block leptin. They block our body's ability to tell us that we've eaten. So when we look at this plate, I'd be the first to admit years ago that this looks like a highly nutrient-dense plate. In reality, there's only one thing on this plate that is nutrient-dense, and that is the chicken. The pasta on there contains lectins and phytic acid. There's broccoli and spinach on there, and peas and tomatoes that contain lectins and phytic acid, as well as the bell peppers and the broccoli that contains the sulforaphane, which we mentioned earlier. That chicken is the only thing on there that contains any nutrients of any relevance on there. So absolutely counterintuitive to health and well-being. But these grains are also high in phytic acid as well as lectins. Now, phytic acid blocks the absorption of zinc, iron, and magnesium, which we keep coming back to in regards to the neurotransmitter signals within the brain, catecholinergic neurotransmitter synthesis. But zinc is essential for the production of testosterone. And this is essential for men and women because all estrogen was once testosterone. Iron is important for supplying oxygen to the muscle to aid with building and repairing. And magnesium is crucial for supporting muscle and energy production. And what this study highlights is that when we consume foods that are high in zinc, these oysters, for example, when co-consumed with corn tortillas, the absorption of that zinc is blocked by 100%, meaning the food that we consume alongside these foods block the absorption of these foods. So it isn't just enough to consume a piece of steak or a piece of chicken or these oysters. When we co-consume them with foods that contain lectins and phytic acid, we are blocking the absorption of these by as much as 100%. And I'll end this there, and we'll jump on to the reason that you're all hanging on to my every word, no doubt. Sean, welcome on board, my man.
Good. I'm a little bit sort of humbled by the fact you guys have been doing this for the last, 20 something
22 so far, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable stuff. Sean,
I'm the last victim of today, huh?
You are the last victim. Yeah, you're going to carry us through. Have you met Sean, Stephen, before, Sean?
No, Stephen, I haven't had the honor. I'm pleased to meet you, and thank you for having me. I don't usually get up this early to talk to anyone, so this is a first for me. And it's quite something. I haven't had these emotions and feelings before, and yes. Entertain me both.
Brilliant. Would you want to introduce Sean to the audience?
Yeah, for sure. Sean, if you'd like to give everyone listening a quick rundown on a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll drill you with some questions. And if anyone wants to pop a comment in or a question for Sean, fire away. But Sean, the floor is yours.
A lot of people really know me as Bond. James Bond. No, that's sorry. That's the next conversation. Sorry. I've basically created a name for myself in the cycling world by the fact that I completely go against the grain according to the nutritional dogma which is supported and promoted and punted in the cycling world. If we go all the way back to 2006, I founded a supplement company. Post 7 years later, my father passed away from esophageal cancer, which basically was the spark in which I became ketogenic back in 2013. And 5 to 6 years after that event, I discovered, which, according to the information that was being circulated within the industry, you need carbohydrates to fuel your rides. And I was basically discovering the absolute opposite. In fact, you didn't need anything to fuel your rides, and you could do it happily on water and salt. And I discovered this basically by pushing the boundaries, and I just ended up riding more and more and more and further and further and further. And I got to the point where, my limiting factor was the sunset and the sunlight. So yeah, since then, many people have followed the same sort of nutritional regime who ride, and there are many runners as well, and they're discovering the same. And my motivation in the beginning was not to find out and benefit from the advantages of not having carbohydrates, but was more the health benefits and the advantages, and to reduce my risk of cancer and reduce my risk of cardiovascular diseases and heart problems. And when one thinks about it, and to think about what the modern Western medical world is advocating and promoting with regards to a low fat and a high carbohydrate diet, specifically to reduce your cholesterol levels, so you don't run the risk of heart issues and cardiovascular issues, I should have been dead 11 years ago, because the amount there is only the prohibited high cholesterol animal saturated fat that I eat. There isn't anything that there is no plants now. There is no there's no product which I take to reduce cholesterol. I effectively eat to have as much cholesterol as possible, the highest cholesterol content that I could possibly have. And yeah, I'm at 51 years old. I did a ride just recently, and I'm a little bit unfit because I'm nursing an injury, and my heart rate was sitting comfortably at over 170 beats. I mean, it's which is absurd, because I should have died. You know, when I think about it, there is something which is being promoted and suggested to us, which is not science. It's more manipulation. And good morning to you both.
Fantastic. Sean, what time is it there with you?
It's, oh my God, it's early. It's it's 10 to 7 in the morning. Yeah.
A little bit later for you than it is for us then.
No,
but yeah,
no, it's all good.
I'm sure that coffee, is that coffee? Do you drink coffee these days?
No, it's actually a Keto Pro. It's a Keto Pro pre-workout. No, it's actually a little bit of a pre-workout mix. My coffee machine, unfortunately, after 10 years of good service, decided to it resigned. It didn't give any notice. It just one day it just stopped working. So I'm looking at it from, we've got good memories, but it will have to be replaced. Yeah.
No worries.
I overheard your discussion about with Anthony with regards to coffee and the fact that it is a seed, and coffee is a complete neurotoxin, and it is. I was actually thinking about how terribly addicted I am to the caffeine. But I don't see myself quitting in any time soon. So yes,
the coffee is a tricky one for sure. And we can circle back to that now. But do you mind me saying that you were once a former boss of a supplement company which promoted carbohydrate, and you've come away from that, and now you're carnivore, and a little bit about some of your achievements. You've done some incredibly long rides, completely fasted on nothing more than water and salt. Some accolades that I think deserve some attention. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? I mean, maybe your progression from being a believer in these carb companies and supplements into moving away, and then proving to the world that you do not need carbohydrates to perform at a high intensity for such a long period of time, because the distance that you've done on the bike during some of these events is absolutely incredible, isn't it? I think people will be keen to hear about that story.
Firstly, I wasn't I founded the supplement company, and before I had partners, I was the boss. I just founded the supplement company. My initial products and my initial vision for the supplement company was not really carbohydrate. It was only when I brought on the partners was there a sort of a decoupling of the products which I wanted, which were the amino acids and the immune boosters and those kind of products. I was using carbohydrates back then, but the initial lack of interest in the company basically happened when my own desire to use carbs waned, and of course the final nail in the coffin, pardon the pun, was the death of my father, and I just didn't believe in, if I wasn't going to use the product, I shouldn't be involved in it. With regards to the cycling and discovering the liberating effects of not using sugar wasn't planned. It wasn't planned. I didn't plan not to ride without fuel. It was more like, well, how far could I actually go? And I think back in 2018, I started riding 100 kilometers every single day. And every single ride, I just wasn't consuming any exogenous calories. And I kept my rides very close to where I live, just in case I do happen to hit the wall. I never did. I never ever experienced any form of hyperglycemia or low energy. And the following year, in 2019, I went to go and do one of my first races. I hadn't raced in such a long time, and it was in Jordan. And it was 198 kilometers across the Jordanian desert from the Dead Sea to the Red Sea. And I said to my brother-in-law, who came along as a second, I said, "Look, my goal is I just don't want to have to ask you for food during this ride. I want to do it without refueling." And it was I rode the ride at a very steady pace, and it was 198 kilometers, and I ended up finishing the race without consuming any exogenous calories. It was just water. And when I got back to the hotel 2 hours later and packed my bike back in its bike bag, I had a handful of ketogenic nuts, which were basically macadamia and pecan nuts. I think there was some Brazilian nuts. And I was completely fascinated by this sensation, these feelings I was having, and I hadn't eaten. I've just ridden 198 kilometers through the Jordanian desert, and I was feeling fantastic. And the following year, we encountered the first social experiment that these people want to anyway. And we couldn't go out and we couldn't ride because we were unfortunately locked down. So I started riding on a set of rollers, and I hadn't ridden on rollers for quite some time, which was a little bit of a shock for me. But after building up from 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes to 2 hours on the rollers to 3 hours on the rollers, I reached out to a very good friend of mine, and I said, "Look, I want to do a 9-hour ride on these rollers. Can you? I need witnesses. Can you come and can we do this as some sort of a feel good thing for your company, and we can get some footage of it?" And which I did. I already had done a 9-hour ride in my apartment without refueling. So that's riding on rollers non-stop for 9 hours. And I went to his block, his apartment, and his office block. And we had, I think, about 10 people that came through the course of the day, and I was locked in a room, and I just rode on these rollers for 10 hours. And it was no coffee then, no sugar, there was no salt, just water. And I rode for 10 hours, and they had to go home, and I couldn't because we had that curfew. So I slept the night in the office, and as soon as the curfew was lifted in the morning, I jumped on my bike and rode home. And I was fine. I was according to Zwift, which via the power meter that was linked onto the Zwift platform, I'd ridden 378 kilometers. Without salt, just on water. So, and it just grew, and then since I've been on Strava, which is only 5 years, I've ridden over 80,000 kilometers, and of those 80,000 kilometers, I think that's 742 rides. It's the average ride distance for 740 rides is 108 to 109 kilometers, and I think out of those 742 rides, I have taken on board exogenous calories in the form of meat, in the form of yogurt, in the form of some sort of non-carb based food, probably 14 or 15 times, which I know is quite something, and which is quite unheard of. But
Just really quickly circling back there, Sean, that distance that you did on the roller equates to 234 miles on non-stop on nothing but water. That is absolutely mental. Now, I work with athletes who compete in Ironman, who will ride 112 mile after a 2.4 swim, followed by a marathon. But that 112 mile is intense. That's a long distance. In fact, I'll be riding that this weekend, working with a friend of mine in preparation for an Ironman. But the thought of riding twice that distance on nothing but water, no food at all, is absolutely unheard of within the athletic community. Now, I did a ride recently. This is going to sound like nothing to you, but I did 80 miles with a few of the Ironman people that I'm working with. 80 miles on one bottle of water, which contained electrolytes and MCT powder. That was it, one bottle of water for 80 miles. Halfway, they began to pull out the energy gels, the cakes, the jelly babies, or whatever it was. And they asked me, what food I had to carry on through the journey. And I said, well, I don't need any food. Yeah, but you have to eat something. No, this is my food. It's all stored in my body. And they couldn't get over the fact that I didn't have anything to eat. They couldn't get over the fact that I only had one bottle. I traveled that 80 miles all the way along. They were checking on me to make sure that I wasn't going to bonk. And I didn't. I managed to complete the 80 miles. And this was a big step up for me from 45. And interestingly, I also had the highest average moving speed out of all the guys on that ride. And that's not to say that I'm a better cyclist, because I'm not by any means, but the fact that I did that 80 miles on one bottle of water with no exogenous food, they couldn't believe that at all. And you did what's that 3 or 4 times that distance on nothing but water, which is absolutely I can't even comprehend that.
My biggest caloric burn. That wasn't my biggest caloric burn. In my biggest caloric burn was 6,700 calories, and that was on a road ride, which equated to 253 kilometers. My biggest power output, and I'm not a pro, I mean, I'm in my 50s. My biggest power output was 251 watts for 6.5 hours, and a normalized power of 286 watts. And that was last year in July. There was 6,000, I think it was 6,100 or 6,300, and I'm not too sure. But the reason why I always put out caloric output, that's if you work out, it's just over 6,000 calories for 6 hours, and that's you're looking at close on 900 to 1,000 calories. And I'm riding at basically my close on my FTP, if not more, in some periods of the ride. And I've recently seen some top triathletes who are talking about having to consume as much as 800 calories in exogenous carbohydrates in order for them not to bonk when they're riding at their FTP during their racing. And I'm burning that amount of calories without having to, with just taking in salt. So with my own, with my own if somebody had to ask me for my opinion, and I'm just giving my opinion without anyone asking, I it just goes to show how you are severely impeding your body's natural ability to function the way it is supposed to function if you take in exogenous carbohydrates. And basically what you are doing, the more you use, the more that you'll have to use, because carbohydrates is such a weak fuel, or such a weak man's fuel, that you become dependent on it. And I don't, and so much so it completely sabotages everything that is natural within your own body, if you have to take in such high amounts. And the more you take on, the more you just sabotage your body's ability to burn its own in endogenous fat stores. And when I think about the way they speak about how much they need, and I look at all these. I watched this Tour de France Tech, where they have placed these stem stickers where it shows when they must refuel, at what time and what bottle, and if it's a bar or some sort of refueling product. And it's laughable. It's absolutely laughable. And the reason why I say that is because we've taken something which is so innate and so primal, and it should be so instinctive, and we've complicated the absolute crap out of it, which is preposterous. We've taken the most basic element of our existence, and we have complicated it by simply using sugar. That's what we've done. And yeah, I find that absolutely incredibly, amusing. Absolutely amusing. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there any other races that did you do another one through the desert after that, or was the one that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I did. I did another race with two of my teammates from Look. One was an Italian bloke, and the other one was a Swiss girl, Millie, and she had already done a year of keto, and she won her division, also beating some of the elite men, and she did the entire ride without taking in any exogenous calories. She basically she basically proved that adaptation. For me, what it proved was mental strength. She's incredibly. She's got an incredibly strong mentality, and also that adaptation is definitely something which I believe needs a personal stamp to it, meaning that you can't say it takes 6 weeks to become ketogenic, or to be in a state of ketosis to do an athletic activity. It really does vary to one's metabolic health, but she managed to perform at the highest levels. And when she stayed with me in Cape Town, prior to that, I mean, she was breaking all of her PBs, and she was doing this while she, while she was in ketosis, and without refueling as well, and she was just developing to become such a phenomenal cyclist. Yeah.
Yeah, incredible stuff. So didn't you do that long ride? Was it Jordan, or is that the one we've already covered?
Yeah. So I did. So the Jordan ride was twice,
Twice.
and yeah, and what other long rides have it? Yeah. So the Jordan rides was only 198 k's. I've done harder rides on my own and longer rides here in Cape Town. Yeah, it's yeah, yeah. The beginning of last year was definitely a real eye opener for me with regard to performance and high intensity performance. At the moment, I'm nursing an injury which it took me about three months to kind of diagnose, and I got the injury literally from riding too much. Which is what they call an ischial bursitis, and which results in me. I ride for 2 hours and then I get inflamed ischial, the fleshy area around my ischial tuberosities. They just get incredibly inflamed, and I can hardly sit anymore. So I'm trying to resolve that, but that's I've got an injury from basically riding too much and not stretching enough, and it's all in the name of science. If you can actually put science into the word of nutrition and sport nowadays, because it's so blocked. Yeah.
So what would you, obviously, you're not eating anything on the rides. Would you prep in regards to fueling? A carb athlete would carb load. Would you fat load, or would you just ride fasted? What?
So, so that is actually an interesting question. Why is it interesting? Because I don't really have a standardized answer to give you. Meaning, like, I wake up at 7, and the first thing I do is I have a coffee, and then I have 3 eggs and some bacon, and I don't have I don't have like a standardized eating regime. I literally wake up, and if I feel hungry, I'll probably have some eggs before I go riding. If I'm not hungry, I won't have anything. And I did a few rides this year, a solid few rides of just basically having my last meal before I go to sleep, and I wake up, say 11, 12 hours later, and I go for a ride, and I'll ride easily 110, 120 kilometers, and that's what I ride. I really feel that there is I don't believe there's any sound scientific evidence that one needs to have fuel in order to perform an event if they are properly in a state of ketosis, or they're properly carnivore, or I don't believe at all. I think our where we have evolved from, we were evolved to eat when we could find food, and we have this incredible ability to do an exceptional amount of work or bouts of exercise before we need food. And this is not to say that I haven't hit the wall or had hypoglycemia on the ride. I have, and I've had it bad. So much so that I remember eating this ketogenic bar and having some yogurt and turning around on my bike after all of this food, and I couldn't make it up this hill. My body just couldn't make any energy. It refused, and it was basically what it boiled down to was fatigue, was a severe bout of fatigue, because I keep on pushing myself harder and harder and harder, and never take the adequate rest. And it had to do with the fact that my liver wouldn't make it, was sabotaging itself. It wouldn't make any energy, no matter how much energy I put in the system. And yeah, I don't say that I'm completely bulletproof from that perspective, but if you aren't fatigued and your body is in a position to manufacture energy, you can go on for days and days without having to take in any fuel.
Yeah, I agree. There's I'm going to read off a post that a friend of mine posted recently. I've been working with him and his son. So he goes on to say that my son was cycling on Wednesday, 1 hour criterium race, national level. This is very interested to demonstrate what is possible. Whilst keto, average heart rate 190, his max is 200. Average power 80% of threshold, and normalized 90% plus of threshold. But that's only part of the story. 23% of the hour was spent in zone 7, neuromuscular zone. The further 10% in 6, 6% in zone 5, and 7% zone 4 threshold. So 46% threshold or above. 40% of the time was in zone 1, which was, of course, slowing down and going around roundabouts and corners and hazards. What this demonstrates is that there appears to be no limit, for him at least, to the intensity at which he can work whilst fat or ketone fueled. At the end of the scale, he has done a 4-hour race at 90% of threshold with an average heart rate of 181 beats per minute, which is absolutely, so that just goes to show, isn't it, that we can not only perform at an endurance level, but at a massive high intensity, which comes back to what you were saying in regards to your FTP. You know, for anyone listening who doesn't know what an FTP is, that's the functional threshold power. This is your threshold power you can maintain for an hour. So this is the gauge of power within cycling, isn't it? And you maintained FTP for a few hours, wasn't it? So your max FTP you managed to maintain for several hours of that ride, I think you said, wasn't it? Which comes into play in regards to what, you know, David is saying his son achieved in this. You know, competing at 90 and 91% of VO2 max is a high level, which just literally goes against everything that we're told is possible in regards to athletic performance, because we're told that we need carbohydrate to do this. We need glycogen. We need muscle glycogen. Yeah, incredible little write-up that.
Yeah, look, I really think it's all got to do with time, and the time it takes to adapt to using your own endogenous energies, whether your body's making the energy from like a neogenesis, or converting the fats into ketones. I mean, my last ride, I was hitting heart rates that I hadn't seen in ages, and that's obviously because I just really am unfit. But the point is that I was hitting those heart rates, and I was holding those heart rates, and they were maximal heart rates, and I had no problem holding them. I was quite comfortable in hitting them, and there's no carbohydrate in my diet, you know, and the whole notion that the only difference between a person who is ketogenic or carnivore and somebody who is a high carb, low fat diet, the only difference between the two is time. time to the person who wants to become effective in ketosis or being a carnivore athlete, and to be effective in hitting those high heart rates and being able to function better in high intensity is time. Time is the most important factor regarding this. And a lot of people, unfortunately, and the ones that I've encountered and helped along their way, they need to understand this, because we live in a society where everything is a quick fix. We want something, we want to press a button, we want it now. We want to get the information, and we want the results from that information now. But because of the metabolic damage that people have done with carbohydrates, unfortunately, the time frame has to be implemented, and I don't believe there is a set time frame. And I believe that is very much that time frame doesn't sit under an umbrella for one size. It varies from individual to individual. Then there's another important factor with regards to how that energy is felt and how we perceive that energy when we are in a state of ketosis and or being carnivore. I'm just going to use keto and ketosis as the generic term here, and because that energy sensation is actually very much different to an energy sensation of sugar. It's almost like a delayed afterburner, if one could describe it as such. And you don't have that this incredible onset of this of surge of sugar, that sugar energy. You get like, oh, I've got energy, I can go again. You almost have to have a mental confidence to switch on that ketosis energy. And in order for you to really perform at its optimal, you have to go fast. You have to, in order to bring that energy on, you have to go fast. It's almost can be a good definition of that. It would be like a ramjet on a hypersonic aircraft. In order for you to activate that ramjet, you have to go fast. And once you are going fast, that ramjet kicks in and you can go. So you have to have the confidence in order to switch it on, because you don't get that like chemical change that you have with taking sugar. There is none of that. You have to be confident that you actually have the energy, and once you are in it, it activates. And that is something which people need to understand. It's a complete difference, a change or mental change when it comes to utilizing, ketones and ketosis energy. So,
yeah, I quite often describe it as superior energy on demand, whereas it's energy that isn't there unless you need it to be. So when you call upon it, the energy is there. Whereas with carbohydrate, it is almost like a stimulant, isn't it? But I mean, you can be living a ketogenic lifestyle, carnivore lifestyle, and not notice anything until somebody runs down the street at you with a knife, and you've got to find that energy and run away, and then the superior energy kicks in, and it just keeps on giving and giving and giving. That doesn't crash. And Andy in the comments there has just said that runner's high is ketosis. So I guess, yeah, the runner's euphoria, I'm guessing what he's alluding to there is after a run and depleting your glycogen stores, your body's producing ketones, and that's the high that you feel. So I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know if you've got any feedback on that, but that makes perfect sense, actually, I guess.
Yeah.
That depleting your glycogen stores, tapping into the body's stored body fat and creating ketones is that runner's euphoria. Any thoughts on that, Steve?
Not really, but I'm going to say that I actually tried the salty water because I was waning. My energy was waning. And a few people in the chat said, just do what he just said. Just do it. So I must admit, it has actually given me a kick. It's incredible because
Yeah,
that is just salty water. That's all that is.
yeah. Salt is salt. I was actually having a discussion that salt was a form. In fact, the term celery originates from the term salt. I don't have the exact history verbatim, but warriors from the bygone era, we're going back into the Roman times, the Spartan times. They were given their salt as a form of currency, and salt was revered as a soldier, in the bygone era. And I mean, I'm staring at 6 kilograms. Well, now it's down to probably about 4 kilograms of salt, and how much salt is a part of my life. And just once again, with all this, and I can only say it's bullshit from my perspective, but everything that the medical nutritional world tells you that you must not do, I do the absolute opposite. And at the age of 51, when I see my peers all battling from chronic health issues, and they're all starting to look like a potato in their body shape, I ask myself, they've actually damaged us. If you chose to follow what they say, you will get damaged. And the amount of salt that I have, I mean, my biggest salt day ever was 18 grams, 18,000 milligrams. And people have been prescribed, don't exceed more than 2,000 milligrams of sodium per day. And I did 18 grams. 18 grams in one day. I mean, I've got it's a 5 gram little scoop that I use, that I got from a supplement, and I use that in my salt, in my fine salt mask. And I'm always throwing 5 grams of salt over my meat. If I put in my water, I'm probably putting half of that. The amount of salt I take in per day, and I can't live without it. It's an absolute necessity. And another thing which I see with these youngsters, these very, very ill-advised youngsters who are on YouTube, and they're taking cane white sugar, and they're mixing it in their water bottles, and they are going out there and they're fueling their rides on this horrific substance. Okay. And they're coming back and they're showing their stats, and they're saying, I'm definitely performing so much better on this than last week, and this is definitely the way to go. And it is just such a naive thing to say when you are performing better on something from the previous week or the 2 weeks prior to that, because you're not. All that's taking place is that you've come off one sugar substance because they were using a nutritional supplement brand previously. The only thing that's happening there is a training adaptation, and they are feeling the positive effects of the training load, but they are advocating and promoting the worst substance on the planet as being their new race fuel. And the next thing they go and do is they go and brush their teeth post using this sugar in their water, the sugar water. And I asked myself, in fact, with tears in my eyes, how can you possibly think that some substance is good for you if you have to go and wash your mouth out or brush your teeth because you have that fur taste in it. And how many people suffer from dental issues with regards to using these sugary products? If something rots your teeth, it can't be good for you, period. But the reverse is said for salt. Salt will help to reduce the onset of plaque. It will reduce the onset of canker sores. It's an antibacterial. If you have a sore throat, you can gargle with it. In fact, if you're rushing out for a bike ride, you haven't got time to brush your teeth, just make sure you got some salt water with you, because it will prevent you from having the onset of dental issues or cavities, and reduce the onset of plaque. Salt, not only is it wonderful for helping the body, for obviously for replacing electrolytes, but also with energy production. It has a myriad of other health benefits. It is truly it's a wonder element. It's an absolute wonder element. And scientists, astronomy scientists have said that besides life, besides water, which is the ingredient for life on other planets, sodium or salt is as well, because apparently when you have a salt water environment, it helps with creating terraforming an atmosphere. It helps with creating heat to create an atmosphere which can actually harbor life. So salt is an incredible element, but yet modern medicine has vilified it, which is preposterous.
Yeah, I consume around 10,000 milligrams a day on an average day, I think. I don't know if I've ever gone up to 18. But yeah, what about you, Steve? I mean, do you consume an awful lot of salt?
I obviously, since I've been carnivore, yes. In fact, I used to be one of those that would watch other people putting salt on their meat and think, oh, they're gonna have I really did. I mean, that's what I was like until my eyes were opened, and I can remember it. And every time I put salt on, and I've got a sea salt shaker thing, and do that, and I think, oh, I would have really tutted if I could see me from the past. So yeah, I mean, probably the little salt shaker might last 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So I have a fair amount of salt, but I don't think in quantities like that. I just look at it, and if it tastes nice, then I think, yeah, I'm enjoying this. I've got enough salt. So yeah, big change for me, really.
Anthony made a comment. Well, I overheard him saying that when he's eating meat, the taste of the meat is wonderful, and as he gets towards the end of that meal, he finds that the taste isn't that good anymore, and it's basically, the way he puts it, the body is saying it's had enough, it's got enough nutrients now, and it doesn't need any more. And likewise for salt, that I find that I can put salt in my water bottle, the same amount of salt, and sip it, and it's a little bit too salty, but I can do it the next day, and okay, now this is perfect. So it's very much, I find that I'm directed by my own taste if it's too salty, or if it's not salty enough, and I think we once again, I'm going to bring up an example of how to describe this with an infant child, and sugar has basically taken an intelligent adult male or female or person, I should rather say, and complicated the entire life for them, because an infant who has been born for like a couple of days knows more about when to eat and when not to eat than an adult person, because it starts to cry. The mother then puts the infant on its breast. It suckles, and when it's had enough, it stops sucking. And we need to go and see a nutritionist. They need to write us out a program. You have a watch, and you need, it's 11 o'clock. I need to have 2 pieces of apple. Okay, at 12:30 I can have a piece of lean breasted chicken with what did that person say? Oh, with 2 pieces of potato chips. Okay, what the hell?
Yeah. I think we've segued well off track there, Sean, and we into let's take it back into into the nutrition side and carnivore. I mean, what would your tips be for everybody moving forward, or somebody new to the diet in regards to adopting a ketogenic or carnivore lifestyle in regards to health, well-being, and or athletic performance? What are your key takeaways in regards to anyone listening?
For somebody who wants to, first and foremost, you've got to make a decision. People who go into adopting the diet, to go into a diet and say, I want to try it out. Trying is not gonna make it. It's like, yeah, I'll give it a taste. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. So you have one mouthful of it, and it didn't kind of really work for me. I didn't like the taste, so you left it. You need to make that decision, and then you need to act on that decision. And you need to understand that if it does get hard, you can't just bail. You can't just jump off the ship. If you're going to set sail, you got to be prepared for rough waters. If you don't have any rough waters, meaning that your adaptation is smooth and you just fall into it, fantastic. That's very much a personal thing. So you've got to make a decision, and then you have to act on that decision. To try something, if you're going to just try it, don't even waste your time. And also, people must realize that this is not a quick fix. It's a diet, as well as the wrong terminology for anything long term. I prefer to use the word lifestyle, because it's forever. Because diet is always referred to as weight loss, and to achieve a goal, and then you kind of lose your way, and you lost again. It has to be, this is my lifestyle. This is how I am, and this is what I do.
Yeah, love that, Sean. Been an absolute pleasure, my friend. Great to chat again. Steve, anything to add?
No, I just thank you for doing that. It's got us to our last hour, which is really good. So we've now done 23 hours, and we'll finish off the last hour. So thank you, Sean.
Insane that you guys have been doing this for almost 24 hours. Insane. Yeah. Guys, yeah. I hope I was a breath of fresh air, or not a stale fart. Thank you very, very much for having me and my weirdness. I'm going to leave you in love, peace, and harmony, and have a wonderful rest of your hour.
Thank you.
Fantastic, gentlemen. Thank you, Sean. Well appreciated,
Cheers,
man.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Bye. There you go. There's someone that can go off track further than you, Richard.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Yes. So, well, we're almost there. I mean, it's actually not 20. It's 23 hours in 2 minutes. So it's been quite a long haul. Interestingly, I was really struggling in the last hour, and someone said about the water and the salt, and I tried that, and that definitely gave me a bit of a boost. So I'm pleased about that. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I think there's been some ups and downs and some lulls along the way, isn't it? I think halfway through I was feeling good. A little bit after that, started to struggle. bounced back. I think I've almost come through, that tiredness and fatigue. Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? I mean, we've 23 hours. I had 3 hours sleep last night, so done this on very little sleep, and I've got to continue to work for at least a few more hours. Yeah, so no early bed for me currently, but yeah, it's been incredible. I've enjoyed.